Hey kids, this is Ivan. How you doing? Well, the time has come in our series on how to play Lamentations of the Flame Princess and other OSR retro clones to talk about magic. Most of the space in any of these games is taken up by the spell list. Sometimes the bestiary as well, but Lamentations of the Flame Princess has no bestiary, and of the 150 some odd pages in here, I think it goes up to page 75 before it starts talking about magic, and then it's all magic. It's almost all spell lists at this point. You can see in this one. I'm mostly going to talk about this game. I'll talk about a few other ones as far as the history and whatnot. But anyhow, these games, if you don't know, uses something called Vancian magic, and some people recoil from that name in horror instantly. Vancian magic, comes from one of Jack Vance's novels or series. I think might have been the Dying Earth series. I forget which. The idea is that a wizard or a cleric, the spellcaster, has a list of spells. They have a number of spell slots depending on what level they are. Now we're going to use the word level here. It gets confusing because you're talking about the level of the caster, like the level of your character is, and also the level of the spell. They use the same word for both. Don't ask me why, but that's what happened. So if you're a, let's take a look here and just give you a concrete example here. The magic user, if you're a 5th level magic user, you can cast 3 first level spells, 2 second level spells, and 1 third level spell per day. That's what you can memorize, and that's what you can cast. That's it. So, and they're pretty much fire and forget. You don't get to cast them again. So that's the canon standard rule in this game and a lot of other games. There are a ton of house rules on the web. I have a ton of videos about them. I'll probably link a bunch of them, but you can go find them. I think I have one of my playlists is just called Magic or Wizards or something like that. You can find a whole bunch. Some people use spell points variants. Some people use one of my favorite things, which I've used for years now, is the idea that magic users and clerics can cast minor magics based on the spells they already have prepared and memorized, because there are no cantrips in these games. So there's a ton of them, and extra, being able to cast extra spells. I know my friend Handy Haversack really big into the idea that this is just the number of spells you can safely cast. So you can try something else. So there's all kinds of sorcery variants and whatnot. But I'll give you the basic canon, rules as written. But there are tons of kind of cheats and extras out there. I'm just going to talk about how it actually works. So as the character goes up in level, they have more spell slots available. They get to cast higher and higher level spells. And so you can look at your, whether you're a cleric or a magic user and find out, well, how many spells you're allowed to cast at that point. Now, clerics know all the spells. They don't have to, they don't have a spell book. They're able to pray for them. The higher up they go in character level, the higher level clerical spells they can cast. In this game, nobody really knows where the power comes from. It may come from gods. It may come from something else. In most of the games, it is based on a god. Lamentations of the Flame Princess is a bit of an odd doc in terms of a lot of things like that, which I like. I really like his spin on a lot of this stuff. I did a video on Magic and the Lamentations of the Flame Princess, how different it was compared to other OSR retro clones in D&D, but it's an old video. I'd be interested to see how much my opinions have changed on some things. But anyhow, getting back to the subject. So there's lists of the spells and their effects. One thing I like about these old school games is the spell descriptions, for the most part, are pretty succinct. They have some in here that are bigger, but they're very open-ended. They have things like ranges and times, and whether or not people can save from them or not. Or are they instantaneous? Are they permanent? Do they take a while to actually come into effect? They'll let you know all that stuff, what the area effect is. But in actual play, a lot of times, the times, depended. Sometimes we just did it for the scene. I didn't think of it as a scene at the time, but it lasted for a number of rounds. We lost count sometimes. As far as the area, it was about that area, about that range for the most part, because once again, we're not using a grid map for the most part in these games. And the spells are kind of open-ended in their description in a lot of them, which there's some leeway. Well, how exactly does this work? What exactly does this look like? There's some wiggle room in terms of like what you want to do and how to narrate it. Something like first edition D&D, in contrast, was very codified, but that's a different animal. And a lot of us learned it that way, and then went back and found some of these easier methods of doing this, or more free form, which I like quite a bit. Anyhow, so that's what you got. You got a spell list. As a cleric, you just pretty much pray for whatever spell you need. If it's a reversible spell, you have to pray either for either like say if it's cure or harm. You have to pray for the right one. You don't get to choose it at the time of casting. However, it's a very common house rule to let clerics free cast. and cast as they will, depending on the need, because you never know when you're going to need neutralize poison right now. So, why would you memorize that if you don't know? Anyhow, magic users, on the other hand, well, they have a spell book. And you start out with a certain number of spells that you get from your teacher or whatever, however, when you were learning magic, you got some spells. And those are spells, that spell list that you have to cast from. Then you have to find or research other spells in order to add them to your spell book. So just because there's a list of spells in the book doesn't mean you get to cast them. You have to research them or you have to find them. Sometimes you find them by, stealing them from other wizards or trading. I did a lot of trading as well. You don't have to just, be a murder hobo. You can be a merchant. You can be a wheeler and dealer. I've done all that. So that's how magic users get them. It's a little bit different than the cleric shtick. And it's kind of wizardy, to be quite honest with you. Then in both cases, you have to spend a certain amount of time asleep. You have to get a certain amount of time, a certain amount of bed rest to be able to prepare your mind to hold new spells. And then it depends on the game. You need a certain amount of time per the highest spell level that you're going to memorize, where you need to meditate if you're a cleric, or just sit there and look at the things and memorize them. Sometimes we hand waved it, sometimes we didn't. Just letting you know, that's how it goes. But that can be a bit of a resource management thing if you want to interject that and enforce it in your game. Then you can. This game handles spell scrolls very interesting compared to other versions of or retro clones of D&D. Usually, you'd have to be a certain rather high level, mid-level, to start writing scrolls. In Lamentations of the Flame Princess, it will let you write a scroll as a cleric or a magic user right away. It just costs money and time, and there's a whole formula for how much money and time it costs. It takes a lot of money and time. It helps to have another cleric or magic user that you're paying a lot of money to do it for you. And I've done that. You can create holy water as a cleric. Once again, money and time. Researching a spell if you want to create a brand new spell as a cleric or a magic user. You can do that. Once again, money and time. So they have a whole bunch of rules that are really simple. A couple random rolls based on the level spell and all that kind of junk. Let's see what else is interesting in here. Transcribing spells from a scroll to a spell book costs money and time. So if you're a wizard and you find somebody else's scroll, you can transcribe it in your spell book, or from spell book to spell book. Money and time. This whole thing. You can create a potion. Now, you want to create a potion? You want to do any kind of magical research? You want to do, I think, any kind of transcribing, creating a staff or a wand, because you can create magic items. It doesn't matter how low level of a magic user you are. The two requirements are money and time. How much are you willing to spend? How much out of game time are you willing to put in all that? And in order to do things like create potions or to transcribe spells or to research new ones, you need a laboratory and a library. And these things cost a lot of money, and they're going to require space. And space, if you're in the big city or whatever, it's going to cost money. And if you want it to be safe, we're going to have to hire people to guard it when you're not there. Money and time. Most other games don't really have these rules in them. And I really appreciate what James did in this game, doing that. Just in terms of it's not super codified, but it gives you an idea that anybody can do this. I was used to growing up with games where you had to be this really high level wizard or really high level priest before you could start doing all this stuff. Here you can do it right away. You need the money, you need the time, and it spells it out, in very simple terms what you need. So I've done that, and it works actually very, very well. It can be kind of fun. It's this little bit of asset building, which adds a lot to the game. At least in my experience, it was a hoot. Trying to figure this stuff out, looting somebody else's laboratory or library, finding an old one. How do I get this stuff from here to there? Because it's a bunch of big, heavy books. It was a brain teaser at that point. Swords and Wizardry also has some great stuff. One of the great things about that particular game is they talk a lot about not just optional rules, but ways to approach things like magic. Where things like big magic, a lot of times you'll come across something in the big bad world, and it's like, well, gee, I guess a wizard did it, but gee, there's no spell in the book that says that's how you do it. And their take was kind of like, well, it doesn't have to be a spell. It could be just this magical ritual that this guy did, and maybe other characters, like player characters, should be able to do that. They should be able to figure out, how to duplicate something like that or create something else. Money and time. So you can have a lot of fun with that and be very, very creative. The other thing, I don't want to make this video too long. The other thing that Lamentations of the Flame Princess did, different from other games, is it completely split the cleric spell list and the magic user spell list. There are no duplicate spells. In a lot of the other games, it's very common to have, like, both magic users and clerics have a spell called light. They can produce light. This then you don't need a torch anymore. Bunch of other ones that duplicates. They have a spell called dispel magic, and both of them can dispel any kind of magic. In this game, they both have dispel magic. That's the only duplicate spell in the entire game, except clerics can only dispel clerical magic, and magic users can only dispel magic user arcane magic. Totally different. I really dig that. That's kind of a neat little shtick. But other games, there's a lot of duplicate spells, and the spells range from being very utilitarian to healing type spells to very damaging, demon summoning, the whole 9 yards. Actually, Lamentations of the Flame Princess lets you summon a demon, or what passes for a demon at first level. It's a first level spell. However, very, very dangerous. Probably kill you. But there are some codified rules in there for how to do it. So have at it. I tried once. Never got that far, but it was going to be a hoot. The other thing I was thinking of is Lamentations of the Flame Princess does not have a lot of those big, giant, damaging spells that you get used to from D&D and the retro clones, like fireballs and lightning bolts. The only spell in here that's really super damaging is Magic Missile, and it's a little more powerful than you would think of normally. But that's the only real instantly damaging spell that they have, except for things like, I think, maybe like Cloud Kill, where it's this poisonous fog that's going to kill everybody. A few other spells that are damaging, but not the big kaboom type spells you'd think of in D&D, and that makes it a lot more challenging. Makes it a lot more interesting. It depends on the game or the day. Like the campaign, I'd envision, like, would I want those fireball spells back or not? But I played a wizard for a long time in a Lamentations game, and he did not suffer. He was you were able to, it made you think on your feet a little bit more, like, how exactly do I want this guy to express himself magically? A lot of charming people, a lot of utilitarian spells, which made the game very, very interesting. So I liked what he did with that. There's times I really wanted a fireball to blow some people up, but anyhow, I digress too much on my own experience, I think. But that's pretty much how the magic works there. Vancian magic is something that you either love or hate, but there are a lot of, once again, house rules out there on the internet to kind of soften the blow a little bit. I grew up with it, so I don't mind it. I certainly love all the other styles of magic that other games use, but this is one that I've become comfortable with and know how to use. Wizards and clerics, they're not superheroes when it comes to magic. They're able to perform, cast spells, but they are not invincible. You have to be very careful. It's once again, the game is about resource management. When do I cast a spell? What spells do I memorize? What would be the most useful here? That sort of thing. Money and time. And, gee, should I cast a spell now or not? Should I wait? So, there you have it. That's Magic and Lamentations of the Flame Princess and other OSR retro clones. And I have another video, I think, coming up on miscellaneous rules. And then hopefully then I will get to the capstone video or two where I talk about my experiences and, how the games actually really feel. How can you apply them to whatever your gaming style or taste is. That's it. Bye.